Hey guys, Crystal Thompson here for Simon Says Stamp Project. I'm using the February 2020 card kit of the month, and today we are doing clean and simple cards. Let me show you what we are creating. This is all done with the kit included in the kit. So the pattern paper, the cardstock, the red cardstock is included, the beautiful stamp sets. So guys, stay tuned, learn how to make these awesome cards that just match and they're super easy to make. All right, guys, let's begin with our first clean and simple. Of course, we are going to be needing the window frames, and we are going to be using just one stamp set from this, and this is going to be the Love You. So again, we're going to keep it super simple using just the contents of the Simon Says stamp kit. We're also going to be using the beautiful embellishments, and I put this on just in a little plate to show you how pretty these guys are, and they have some very nice flat fronts and backs, so it's going to make this project really cool. You're going to need some Simon Says ink and black, and then we have, of course, our stamp pad. We have some liquid glue to make the shape of the heart, and then we have 2 pieces of cardstock also included in the kit, and I have cut this 4¼ by 5½, and then I've cut a semi straight rectangle there. So what we're going to begin doing, we are going to stamp the sentiment I love you. So we're going to remove that back part of the card base, make a little room here, and then we're just going to ink this up right at the bottom corner of it. And this is going to be a really fun, colorful way to create a clean and simple Valentine's Day card. Not necessarily only Valentine's Day, but you can totally do anniversary. Then we're going to grab our AQUA mono liquid. So whatever kind of adhesive you like to use, as long as it dries clear, you can achieve the same effect. So I'm going to begin by drawing out my heart. And if you're not very good with drawing, you could totally just trace one. If you have heart dies, you could do that as well, but honestly it just makes it very simple. We are going to just do a very light layer of this glue all over that heart, trying to stay within the lines. So again, if you have a stencil that has a heart, or you could just freehand a heart, it does not have to be perfect. You know, it is a handmade card, and there's not another one like this. So again, I'm using the February Simon Says stamp kit, and this is all clean and simple cards that you can make and you gotta try. All right, so I have my heart ready to go. Let me bring it up to the camera. I know it can be a little bit difficult since we are using that clear glue. So what we're gonna do, we are going to bring in our embellishments, and we're gonna try to cover the entire thing. And the reason that I was saying to just do a very light layer of glue is because when you squeeze them down, when you press them down, you don't want your shape to be kind of distorted because it squished the glue and it went out. So we're just gonna bring this in. Then I'm gonna lift. I'm gonna bring it to the edge of my table because it's really hard for me to lift. Okay, and now we have that. So we're gonna bring in, I'm gonna bring in my Studio Cadia embellishment wand. And so what you can do, we're gonna use the tip, and if you don't have an embellishment wand, you can just use a pen to move around the hearts. And the reason why I'm doing this is that I really want to create that circular shape. So bring in and move around those hearts to make that shape. It doesn't take very long. It's just cleaning it up just a little bit. So you can press it down a little bit more. They're not moving, but they're nice and stuck. You can come back to your tray. And in this case, it's just a little plate. And I'm putting those where I can grab some of that glue. So just pop those in. And it doesn't matter what color you're using to make that heart, as long as we're staying within those lines. And if there's a little, you know, the glue squeezed out, just bring in clean embellishments and then redo your shape. Okay. You know, aside from hearts, if you think that's just too mushy, you can do a square, you can add circles, you could do a square all the way out, and it would make it really cool. So I'm gonna want a little more of a dip right here, so I'm just gonna use my tip here of my embellishment wand. And we have a little guy there, a little piece of paper, and there we have it. Now we have this beautiful heart made with the embellishments. And it's going to hold up pretty well. I'm not too worried about it. So then we're going to move this out. We're going to bring back our white cardstock, and then we're going to add foam on the back of this. So you can wait for it to dry. I'm impatient So I am just going to try to trim pieces of cardstock and pop them in the back. So this is very much real live time card making. We're not fast forwarding, and I wanted to show you this way because it really does make a super, super easy, clean, and simple card. I'm going to remove the backing. Okay, and then remove the backing off the other side. Make sure you squeeze it so you can pull it. And then we can place on our card base now. So I'm going to do this up to the topper part of the card base and leave this bottom part exposed. So that does the first one. You can come in and do embellish on the bottom, but I am really keeping it clean and simple, and look how fun, and look at all that dimension. When you're mailing this out, you're definitely going to have to pay some extra postage, but I feel like it's totally worth it. All right, we are doing our window of really fun craft paper. Let me show you what we're going to be using for this. Of course, we're going to be using the included tri-square wafer die included in the kit, and I have die cut squares that are going, I have actually hand cut squares that are going to fit in this for that little window. And let me show you what we did here. I already did it for the video, but I have die cut these out of a 4 1/4, 5 1/2, and then once I got the right measurement, I went and cut around so it would work perfectly. Then with that said, these little papers were cut from the Timeless Rose Craft Papers paper pack included in the kit. And then from the Beautiful Sentiments, we're going to be using the I Love You, and we are going to be doing some white heat embossing. This is not included in the kit, of course, but I think most of us do have white embossing powder. You're going to need a little bit of foam squares or foam tape to be able to pop these onto the bottom of this. And then also included in the kit is a piece of red, Schoolhouse red cardstock, and we're going to be using it to heat emboss that I Love You sentiment. And for embellishments, we're going to be using the beautiful container of the Buttons Galore and More Sweethearts embellishments. These are just absolutely super, super cute. So to begin, we're going to move all these things inside. So let me show you what we got. So I was mentioning earlier that we were using that window, that tri-square wafer thin die on my cardstock. And again, I had cut it out of that 4 1/4, and then it made it easier for me to then, when that was done, come in and cut the edges, because I'm not super great and I don't want to take the time to do the measuring. So I'd be sure to get the lines and the you know, the wafer moves, the die moves. I get this really cool frame. All right, so we are going to begin by placing these in the back, and if they're a little bit longer, be sure to have a pair of scissors ready to go. So I'm going to move this out of the way, but let me show you. I already have the foam squares ready to go, so I'm going to remove all that backing. And so the foam squares are going to do two things. One, they're going to lift this cover that we've created with a little bit of dimension, and two, it's going to really hold those pieces of cardstock, and you don't need them to hold a ton. So we're going to begin just adding these, and as you can see, they're very rough cut. You don't have to take a ton of time to cut them perfectly. Just makes it really, really fun. I'm going to just go ahead and trim at the edge, being careful not to trim my bottom cardstock. And we're just going to place them alternating colors. So we got, let me show you what they'll look like. So they'll look like little windows, but it makes it super, super easy. So you can kind of say this is like a faux shaker. And I'm going to attempt to not put the same two pieces of pattern paper right next to each other. So I'm going to move this one up to the top. Do you see what I mean? And we're just going to continue on. I'll pop this on this side. And you're going, but Crystal, then your foam tape will not attach. Well, do not worry, because I have a plan for that as well. So we have that ready to go. So if you're at the end of your kit and you're going, what am I going to do with these little scraps of pieces of paper? This is what you can do. You can create a kind of like a faux shaker window card with a pattern. Then I'm going to bring in my Tombow adhesive and just kind of roll it on the back of that. And so now we have some real adherence there. So we're going to place this and we're going to try to center it. Now you have a really fun, and look how clean, even though you're using pattern paper, it still looks really, really nice and clean. Okay, I'm gonna bring the strip that I have pre-cut. And again, if you're looking to see what you're gonna do with your scraps, this is a great way to use scraps, because if you run out of that white cardstock included in the kit, then you can very well just grab some, you know, Neenah from your stash. So I have that I Love You, and I'm gonna stamp it down. Then I'm going to bring my white heat embossing and cover the entire I Love You. And then we're going to heat set that and place it on the card. All right, so I have my sentiment ready to go. And I just used my trimmer and trimmed the edges of this. So you can place it wherever you want. I'm kind of going to go right over the window, and I have a little bit of foam adhesive on the back of that. And look how pretty that is. So I'm going to go ahead and embellish this because these hearts are just absolutely stunning. So again, this doesn't necessarily have to be a Valentine's Day card. It can actually be anything that you want it to be. I mean, it could be a birthday card, and you don't have to put in the hearts if you don't want to. But again, this is a great way to use all the contents of your kit, and you know, you created your own cover die out of that wafer die. All right, guys, so for our next Clean and Simple card, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. So remember that cover die that we created? Well, we ended up with a bunch of these little squares, 6 necessarily to be all correct. So what we're going to do, we're going to heat emboss these in white, and then we're going to be doing some ink blending using different colors of distress oxides, and then we're going to put it on this beautiful white card base, and it's just going to make it look super, super clean. Our sentiment is going to be stamped "Thank You" using the Simon Says Stamp black ink. Then I have my florals from the window frames ready to go, and because I'm only going to be using the corners, you can see I'm not necessarily using a full block there. And then you'll be needing, of course, some blenders, and we can get started. So let me move all this stuff out of the way. Let me show you how we're going to hold this down. So using a piece of scrap paper, what we're going to do, we're going to flip these over, because the die cut has cut nice and clean on one side and not so clean on the other. We're going to flip them down to the not so clean side. I'm going to be using 5 of my squares. And then we're going to be using the purple tape. So purple tape is temporary masking tape that will not tear apart your cardstock. And I still like to kind of touch it on my fingers, get some of those oils on it so we can lift it up from the card paper that we're going to be using. So you're wondering, why are we doing this? Well, this is a great way to hold your pieces of cardstock, especially the little pieces such as these, without having to get them to move. And then we can stamp them and heat emboss them and then remove them when they're ready to go. And again, being able to reuse some of the cuts that you already used. I have my squares ready to go. I have them on a piece of printer paper, and I wanted to show you. So we have them taped to the edge of this. I have them separated because we are going to do the ink blending. I'm going to begin with worn lipstick. So there's 2 ways you can do this. You could totally just do some ink blending on the cardstock and then cut out using the die, the tri-square, or you can reuse what you have, such as what I'm doing. So we're just going to ink up each one. We're going to move on to milled lavender. Ugh. And then we're going to grab our next blender. And you don't necessarily have to use distress oxides. I just feel that I would not have to do a ton of blending by using these inks because they're very, very creamy. And they just have a really fun color. You get those edges. We move on to Victorian Velvet. So we're just going to clean off that brush and blend those colors. So again, I didn't want to have to do a ton of work and maybe remove those little pieces of cuts out of my sheet of paper here. So below is all the products with links to where you can get them on the Simon Says store. So be sure to follow those. And then the kit is amazing. I think this is going to be a sellout. So if you get your hands on it, that's awesome. And if you don't, you could totally purchase the dies and the stamps, pretty much everything separately. So select what cards you want to make and then go ahead and press the buy button. All right, last but not least, I am using the cracked pistachio. And I'm just going to blend that in. And I feel like these colors are really soft, kind of look like those, the Sweethearts candies. That was really the inspiration behind it. So there we have it. Really happy. You can go ahead and spritz with water if you want a little more dimension. We're going to let that be. So then I'm going to bring in my embossing ink, and we're going to be stamping those with the edge of that. And when they're all nice and wet, then we're going to go ahead and heat embossed. So we're going to begin with our first one, which is going to be this pink. And the edge of the flower is just going to make it look really fun. So you're going to have some geometric patterns from the rectangle, and then you have the geometric square lines, clean lines from the square die. So we have that done. We're going to grab our white powder, and we're going to do it all on this piece of cardstock before that ink dries. And we're just going to kind of work it all over that square, and then we'll remove it in just a couple minutes. You want to grab some tweezers because these squares are about 1 1/4 inch by 1 1/4 inch, so it makes it really, really hard to hold on to them when you're doing heat embossing and you don't want to burn your fingers. So when you pull it up, you kind of have a nice little handle using the tape in the background, and you can see that the powder is going to get stuck onto that cardstock or into that paper, and that's just fine. You can then put it back on your container. I'm going to grab my little tweezers. I'm going to grab the Wagner heat gun, and we're going to heat set. And don't overheat set white embossing powder because it does tend to disappear. And then you have that really cool straight lines, and then you have that geometric inside. So we're going to go ahead and do all of them, and then we'll proceed to making our card. All right, so I've done them all, and this is what they end up looking like. And I have to tell you, because we were doing it real time, I didn't allow the ink to dry, so I had a ton of a cleanup. But let me tell you, when you do that, the best way to do it is to blow on that, and everything stayed pretty clean. So this is my non-blown stamped embossed image, and this one does, so you can see that it's a lot cleaner. So before we move on to putting these together, and like I said, I've already put little pieces of foam tape on the back, I'm going to come in with the sentiment from the window frames, and we're going to stamp it just on black ink. And I felt that I didn't want to do any black heat embossing because I didn't want it to have those black specks on it. And I know you can do all sorts of things such as adding the cornstarch, but I think that the simple thank you with this very nice black crisp ink is going to do the trick. So I've held it there for a couple seconds to really allow that cardstock to absorb it and perfect the first time. So now we're going to move on to placing our squares. So I kind of had a diagram about where I wanted to place these. So I'm going to start at the top, and I don't have a specific color in mind that I'm going to begin with. I'm kind of just going to stagger them down. As you can see, I'm just grabbing them. I'm going to add the little closer to that side, so we have a little more contrast. And again, this is just a really fun way to use your scraps, especially when we did that other card. So if you are just popping in or you're finding this video, go check out my other video using your own DIY card panel. So I'm going to attempt to move this one just a little bit. There we go. So you have a nice, clean, but yet you have a very colorful card. So this is ready to be placed on your card panel. I'm not going to embellishment. I thought about using the white hearts, but I feel like the floors are just really pretty, so I'm going to let that be. All right, and for next card, we're going to really clean and simple. What we're going to be doing, we're going to use the Love You from the window frames. We're also going to be using the beautiful embellishments, and then we are going to use the Schoolhouse Red cardstock, and this is just a little strip that's been cut to be placed on my white cardstock. And then I have the score tape. So let me show you what we're going to do. So obviously all this is included in the kit. So we're going to begin by placing this lovely, lovely piece of cardstock, and you can do it with the score tape, or you can go ahead and do it with your normal tape roller. So in this case, I'm going to be using the Tombow. So I'm going to just try to stay within a straight line. And just clean that off my desk before it stains it. Then we're going to place this down and just kind of line up those corners. And so I've seen people where they raise their white panel, but I really wanted to keep it nice and straight, because then you're going to see what we're going to do on our next step. So with our next step, we're going to be using the score tape to be our adhesive for our beautiful embellishments. So you're like, what? Yes, so score tape is super, super strong. I believe I got started within the scrapbook industry, and then us card makers grabbed it and ran with it. So we're going to add just a little strip right here. We're going to try and cut it. I think it'll be easier than being on the roll. And we're just going to try to keep it lined up with that top panel. And if you cut just a little bit extra on the edge, it'll be a little bit easier to get straight line, but we're gonna make it work. So now we have that score tape right there. And we're gonna lift that, and I think this is the hardest part about score tape, is lifting the backing on it. So we're gonna just really get it in there. There we go. And now you have a beautiful strip. So what we're gonna do here is we have our embellishments, and we're gonna create an embellishment ribbon using the beautiful hearts included in the kit. So I have my Studio Cadia pickup tool, and I'm going to begin at the edge, and I'm really just going to alternate colors. And the reason this works is because these hearts are flat backed, and it makes it really easy. And you don't necessarily have to follow a pattern. I just think it'll be easier. I'm going to speed up the process of this because I think it's going to take me like a minute, and you don't have to slowly watch my progression, but I wanted you to see how easy this was. All right, that was incredibly easy, right? Super, super fun. They're not going anywhere. That score tape is just holding on to them. So this is gonna stay a little longer than if you use liquid adhesive. I have my Love You from that window frame stamp set. I'm just gonna do some black ink on this. Keep it nice and simple. And I have put the stamp at the bottom of my block, and that way I don't interfere and I don't have any like odd lifting. And there you have it. Now you can embellish just the top or the bottoms of this. And look how fun. Super, super pretty. Thank you so much for watching and staying tuned with me on this February 2020 card kit. I'm so excited for it. I love these clean and simple cards. We were using some of the same components, squares from this, and these guys match, and it just works out really nicely. And honestly, we use just the kit contents and a few basic supplies. Be sure to click like and click subscribe if you haven't yet, and that way I know that you like these kind of videos, and you will get notifications on YouTube when there are new videos. My handle is Crystal Thompson Design on Instagram, and all the products used in this video are linked below, and they are affiliate through Simon. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day.